Hello and welcome to another week of Labrats. So the last time we left off, I had introduced the concept of density, which essentially means how many molecules or atoms or particles are packed within any given substance or material. So we looked at a few different things in order to determine that, and I left you off with a cliffhanger when I mixed those two sugar solutions together and I could essentially layer them. So this week we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So are all liquids the same density? So if any given liquid, will it have the same amount of particles packed into it? So I sent you home with 4 different substances. I gave you corn syrup, dish soap, canola oil, and rubbing alcohol. The 5th substance you actually need to get in your own house. It's water. So we're essentially going to explore that concept once again with a glass and all of these substances. So the first one, I actually colored it for you because making purple is sometimes a bit of a trick. So if you ever want to do this experiment again, essentially how you make the color purple is you mix red and blue together. And when you mix red and blue together, it creates the color purple. So I'm just going to add a few drops of food coloring to this corn syrup, and then we're going to mix it together. So corn syrup is exactly what it sounds like. It is syrup that is made from corn. So as we can see, it's pretty sticky, right? It's got a pretty sticky feel to it, and look how we're making the color purple. Isn't that neat? So there's a special science word actually for a material that tends to be sticky like this, and it's viscosity. Okay, so viscosity is the science word that we use to describe whether or not something wants to stick together or not. So we're going to keep stirring this until we feel like we have a pretty decent color mixture going on. It looks like we've mixed all of our colors together, and what we're going to do is we are actually just going to pour this right into the bottom of our cup. This is going to represent the purple part, or the purple component, to our rainbow. Because we're going to basically make a color rainbow here. All right? So we've taken care of the corn syrup, which is pretty viscous, and viscous means that it doesn't really flow very easily, or that it's sticky. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our dish detergent, and we can also see that it's pretty viscous again, but that it's maybe less sticky than the corn syrup that we were just dealing with. So this again represents the blue component of our rainbow. So we're going to just pour this in along the side at a 45-degree angle to limit the amount of mixing that these substances do. This is actually something that we do in science when we're not necessarily really wanting to mix our substances together, but to layer them. We describe this as a 45-degree angle pour. Okay, there we go. And then we have water. And in order to make our rainbow, we are going to add a few drops of green food coloring here. And this is going to be the green component. Maybe we want it to be a little bit more green than that. So let's add and we'll swirl it around. Again, this is actually something that we do in chemistry, which is called swirling. So you swirl it, and then we're gonna once again tip this to a 45-degree angle, and we're gonna slowly pour this in. Just like that. Taking care not to just pour it in too aggressively. Very slowly like that. Okay, there we go. All right, and next we have our canola oil. So canola oil is made from the canola plant. So if you've ever been driving in southern Saskatchewan and you've seen those beautiful yellow crops, that is canola. And canola is actually a legume, so it's related to peas. If you've ever had peas before, that's a legume. It means that they grow their seeds in a pod. That is what that means. Canola is an oil. So if they grow these tiny little seeds and you can crush them and you'll see oil. So that's how this is made. And we could dye it yellow to make it more vibrantly colored, but because of the different properties that canola oil has and that oil in general has, it doesn't like to mix with color. So we actually can't. You could try to add a few drops of color to this and it wouldn't actually work. And we can discuss that at a different point in time with a different experiment, why exactly that is, or why exactly oil is that way. So we can't do anything with it, but luckily canola oil is kind of yellow, so it sort of suits its purpose. So again, we're gonna tip this at a 45-degree angle, and we're going to slowly pour our oil in. Just like that. Just like that, okay? And the last one is rubbing alcohol. So this is what's actually used in hand sanitizer to sanitize things. So we're gonna add a few drops of red food coloring to this, and then we're gonna stir it up. We maybe want a little bit more red than that, a little more pink. So there we go. We have our red food coloring, and now we're gonna just slide this along. So what do we think this is gonna happen? Is our alcohol gonna be, you know, more dense or less dense than the oil? So what's gonna happen here? We're just gonna tip it again and pour along the side. And there you have it. We have created a rainbow of liquid density. So essentially what is happening here is that we have created a gradient of more dense to least dense. So the corn syrup on the bottom is the most dense. There are the most tiny particles of sugar. It's actually the added sugar particles that are causing it to be so dense. Dish soap has a bunch of different, you know, additives to it, and it's not as dense as the corn syrup, but it is certainly more dense than water, right? And we can see that when we were pouring that dish soap in, it was kind of more sticky than the water. Then we poured in the water, and it floats on top of the blue dish soap because it is less dense than the dish soap. Next, we poured in the canola oil, which is proven to us that the canola oil is less dense. That means that there's less particles in this canola oil than there is in the actual water. And lastly, when we poured in our rubbing alcohol, the rubbing alcohol is the least dense of all of these. Okay, it is the least dense, and so it floats on top of all of them. Now, if we wanted to do something like add in a little bit more canola oil or something, we would still prove our point, because what would happen is it might sink down to the bottom if you poured it in, but it would actually come back to float in the oil layer. And that's because of the different amount of particles that are in each of these different liquids. They each have different amounts of particles, with alcohol having the least amount of particles, which makes it float on top of everything, and corn syrup having the most, so it has the most particles packed into it. So there you go. If you want, you can continue to experiment with this, because I gave you enough to probably make 2 liquid rainbows like this. And next week, we're going to explore some different aspects of chemistry as well. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section, and I'll see you guys next week.